Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. My guest today is a 3-time Emmy Award-winning television director who spent years using the camera lens to masterfully connect stories with audiences. Then, Mary Madeiras turned that lens inward. Her new book, The Akashic Way, is about what happens when we slow down, listen, and begin to understand our own lives in a deeper, more meaningful way. Mary, thank you so much for being here. I showed you, I am into this book, and I'm so excited to talk with you about it. But I want to start, I think the best place for us to start is with you and your journey. You are, as I mentioned, a very accomplished creator. When did you know that was something that you wanted to do?
You mean the Akashic Records or the
just your in your TV career? How did that happen for you?
Oh, well, it happened actually out of, first of all, thank you for having me, Ivy. Nice to meet you here.
Very nice.
It started actually when I was little. I had a chaotic family, and I used to kind of run to my room and to get away from it all, and I would watch old movies. And in New York, there were movies that were on all night, old movies when I was growing up. And I got immersed. I just became immersed in the storytelling. It saved me. It helped me. And so I knew on some level that I really wanted to be involved in some way, shape, or form in storytelling. And so that's how it started. I majored in music in college. That's another story, but it informs everything that I do right now. But I then began, I was in New York, living in New York City, and I then took off and running. I got a job at WCBS TV in New York, the local station there. And I began as, they were known as secretaries then, not assistants. And I started there. Now that was news. And I did news and sports. And then I rose up. I became a production assistant, then an assistant director. And the more that I was immersed in, the power of storytelling, right. And I was at CBS when Dan Rather was there. It was really much different than it is right now. That's all I'm going to say. But I was always attracted to storytelling in terms of drama or even comedy. So I set my sight on, I want to be on soap operas because that was the next logical slide over. And I stuck to my intention, and I manifested it. And I wound up working on 7 soap operas in New York and LA. And that's where I got the Emmy Awards. And 1 Emmy was for working on the Olympics with NBC in Korea. So that's where those came from.
So you have this amazing, thriving, very successful career, and I know you're still involved in creating, but somewhere along the way, you realized you were looking for something more. What was that like? It wasn't one thing, right? It was a journey that sort of brought you to that place.
Yeah. And again, it shoots back to, rewinds to when I was little. I was born into a Catholic family, and I didn't fully resonate with it. When you're little, you just you have to go along with it. But I do recall knowing, experiencing a presence that was greater. We called it God growing up. Now it's source, universe, creator, God. And I knew, I just could feel the essence of something loving me back. So now put that on hold. Then I go through all the, the growing up time and working in television. And then while I was still working on the soaps, and I think the last one was General Hospital that I was working on, I was overlapping at that time. I was out in LA, and I was always craving metaphysical stuff. I was attracted to Eckhart Tolle. Oprah was breaking that open. Those kinds of ascended masters that we have, call them that. The Bruce Liptons, the Greg Bradens, it goes on and on. Deepak Chopra was big in the beginning. And so I was already doing that. I was overlapping it with my work, at the same time as my work. And then what happened was my time at the soaps it was abruptly taken away from me. I'll just put it that way. It's probably in my book that way. It's like the floor came out from under me. Here I had been doing this for years, at least 25 years. And there was just a big change happening, and they didn't renew my contract, and there were no real concrete answers or excuses or reasons, I should say.
Yeah.
And I went around to all the actors, Tony Geary, Jeannie Francis, who were wonderful to work with. And I went to every one of them and I just said, "What is there something I'm missing here that I didn't do well or whatever?"
Mm.
And they thought I was joking. And they were like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I'm not being renewed." And they were like, "Oh, come on, you're fooling around." And I went, "No." And they all said to me, bless them all, "You're one of the best directors we ever had." That's all I needed to hear. I knew something else was happening, but I didn't know what.
Right.
So there I am. Floor comes out from under me, and then I was at a psychic reading, and this is where it all began. There was a being that was seen in the psychic reading over my shoulder, and he told the psychic that he oversees my Akashic records, and I didn't know what those were. Asked the psychic, and she said, "I'm not quite sure either, but that's what he says he does." So I went home and I started looking into it. And even then, it wasn't like choirs went off. I knew it though. Something was familiar to me about this realm, this Akashic realm. And so I still didn't pay attention. And then I was at a metaphysical bookstore out in Los Angeles and that I used to go to all the time. And there was a book that was hanging off the shelf above me and brought my attention to it. And when I pulled it down, it was called How to Read Your Akashic Records. So I was like, okay, we get nudges from divine source all the time. And I'm an example of what happens when you don't listen. It literally will hit you over the head. And so I just started reading and I began to open my records. And when I did, I would hear blocks of thought that were not mine. I knew they were not mine. And they were profound, amazing, beautiful. A lot of them are in the book. And so the book is my journey in my journey into my own records, working stuff out in my life at that time, during that time up until now.
So, Mary, for people who don't know, because this seems like something that I was not familiar with, and I think a lot of people aren't familiar with it, what are the Akashic records?
Mm-hmm. I wasn't either. And so it's metaphysical and it's a little ethereal. And so it can get a bad rap in that way. And I say that because people go like, "Oh, come on, what is that?" Well, we now know it's a field. It's a quantum field. And the idea of the Akashic realm, the Akashic records, is that throughout history, every soul's actions, thoughts, experiences, each soul gets imprinted and recorded into this quantum field. Now, the Akashic records have been around under different names from the beginning of time.
Mm.
They're referred to as the Book of Life in the Bible. They're in the Quran. They're referenced as different terms. They're in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. They're they're everywhere. Mm-hmm. Every culture you can look at, there is this belief and knowing that there is this field that exists, a quantum field that records basically everything that we as a soul reincarnating, that's the idea, time after time, gets recorded into. And we now know science is showing us, science has now proven that there is this field. Tesla's talked about it, the center point, that there is this, Dr. Joe Dispenza refers to it, the field of possibilities, and there is this field, and it is a living essence. And it quantumly records stuff. And so when we raise our vibration to this higher vibratory state where this essence exists, which is the divine realm, we then can hear and visit, in a sense, and experience the imprint of ourselves, which means we could see past lives. We can get, and they come through as, for me, blocks of thought. Some people that work in the records actually see things physically. For me, it's blocks of thought. And sometimes I actually will see something. I'll see a client operating in another lifetime in some way. But it's amazing because what it's recording is our soul's journey. The idea being that every soul chooses on the other side before reincarnating to come to the planet at a particular lifetime with, I like to call them, an overarching chosen theme, such as I'm coming to the earth for self-love. It's not about lessons. It's about choosing the expression of something. And the purpose of all of us choosing these expressions of these themes is to co-create together as a humanity back into Source itself for the ultimate expansion of Source to infinity. It's
So
trippy.
how do you access these records then? I know you do readings, you've become
Yeah.
a practitioner. How does it work for someone, like me? I don't I'm very interested, have no idea how this
Mhm.
works.
Well, anyone and everyone can access their
Okay.
Akashic records. And so for me, I decided to study at the Center for Akashic Studies, uh, which was founded by Linda Howe, who wrote one of 6 or 7 books on the Akashic records. Uh, and so what I use is, we all need to be able to raise our vibration, let's
Mm,
say, from an ordinary state of consciousness, I like to say, to a higher state of consciousness. Now, people do that through meditation. Edgar Casey was the sleeping prophet. He was doing it. He was accessing the Akashic realm, and I didn't know that. And I had been studying and following him for years. Um, so you can do it that way. However, we raise our vibration, it doesn't have to be a specific way. So for me, I use a sacred prayer. And that sacred prayer brings me, it invites in the energies of my Akashic records or somebody else's. And as I'm saying the prayer, my vibration is shifting and my ego disappears. It's not present, but I am. My mind, my imagination, my way of speaking is present because I need to be present in order to convey, right, these quantum
right.
thoughts to
Did it
people or to myself.
did it take you a while to be able to get to that place?
No.
Sometimes even meditating can be hard for people to really lean
Hmm.
into.
It's not hard at all. And actually, to be honest with you, I think that what really helps us shift is just simply knowing
Mm,
that there is source, divine, creator, just knowing that, without any interference. It is being in that space of just knowing that invites that opening. So, the other thing that's making it easier is that the planet is expanding. Consciousness is expanding, and the frequency of the planet is increasing really quickly. And a lot of psychics are showing us this. Even Greg Braden, he measures stuff. The magnetics are changing. So things are going faster. It's feeling that way. And therefore, frequency is getting higher, which means, in my opinion, if our frequency is raising, then we're closer to what's on the other side of the veil, aren't we? They
yeah.
say the veil's thinner. It's that we're vibrating at a higher vibration, so it's much easier to hear. I hear from the records without even saying the sacred prayer and opening them anymore.
Wow. Wow.
It's been
Uh,
happening lately for me.
we're gonna take a very quick break. When we come back, I want to dive into some of the things that you talk about in the book because it's
Okay.
fascinating. And I have to say that one of my favorite things is something that I feel like I've said without before I even read the book. Is every part of your story plays a key role in your soul's hidden path. The thought of that just makes my heart smile, and I feel very connected to that.
Yep.
So we're gonna take a quick break. We come back. We'll talk more with Mary Madeiras and the Akashic Way. Be right back. So we're talking with Mary Madeiras, and the book is The Akashic Way, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records. You mentioned, Mary, this book is like it's like a part memoir, part explanation of the Akashic Records, and there are so many, the way you frame so many concepts that we think about and act on every day in our lives. It's fascinating to me, and I thought maybe we could go through some of them. One of the first ones. And this one spoke to me. I think anyone who prides themselves in being a storyteller, one of the records and one of the messages is that you received is that you are a writer, you are a teller of stories, passing on love tucked under words and ideas. As the words and ideas are released, the love begins to ooze up and out into the universe. This is the power of storytelling. When I read that, I immediately felt so connected to everything else in the book, and it speaks to the power of our intuition. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about the what our intuition is to us.
Well, and that speaks to our imagination as well, and the power of our imagination. Well, intuition is part of everything. It's part of the Akashic records, of course. The Akashic records mirror to us that, our intuition is that little different. I believe intuition works with creativity. It isn't creativity. The intuition is the part that I think there's a chapter in there about, or mention in my book about minuscule moments. It's related to that intuition where we can all say that there's that first moment when we're thinking about something or we're wondering about something. There's this first instant that a lot of times we don't listen to because our egos kind of slip in and engage our minds and trying to figure it out and what does it mean and give it a perception. And then we kind of like get away from that first intuitive moment. So that's what intuition is. It really it's our being speaking itself in 1 second. And interesting that we're talking about like being on television and working in television. Is the majority of the time when I was directing soap operas and the producer would want to do 10 takes, 12 takes, and the actors knew when I took the show to the edit to edit, which take did we always use 99% of the time? Take one.
Yeah.
Because take one was when everybody just was like, boom, the intuition was there and the trust was there and it worked. Everything came together. And I think that is what happens. Storytelling is it's the most powerful thing we have besides music, I believe.
I agree.
Right? Yeah.
I agree. 100%. You also talk about ego. You say the ego cloaks itself in clever disguises, blending with collective fear until it becomes what the records refer to as a massive soup ego. I thought that was so interesting to think about ego in that way. Does our ego get into our way often?
Well, the records also will. This is trippy, but they also show us, or divine shows us, that the ego is not real. And the image I'm frequently shown is of a balloon blowing up, and what gets fed into the balloon are unloving, undivine thoughts. So the ego, this is in line with Eckhart Tolle's work, and the records often refer to Eckhart Tolle as an ascended master among us. And so what happens is when we don't know we're light, this is how it starts. If we don't know we're light, if we don't know we are love, then our actions that we take reflect unlove, undivine, let's say. And so those actions then collect into an energy. It's sort of an unlove energy that we can call the ego. Now, what happens is when a chunk of humanity, or I mean, in our case, we have a lot of this going on in the United States right now, that people just don't know who they are. And so they don't know their love and light. And, somebody might say, well, no, they're evil. And the divine says, no, they're not evil. There is no evil and there is no ego, really. There is the perception of the ego, which makes it relevant, if that makes sense. So we perceive that there is this collective thing, and it fears its demise. And Eckhart Tolle talks about that, and the records affirm that so this collection of energy of unlove, undivine, uncompassionate, all of that is because we don't see our own light, that builds and becomes a soup. That's the image that the records have shown me. And it's this just soup that gets fed into only by unloving, undivine actions, thoughts, and experiences. So because it's not real, and you know why it's not real? Because the only thing that is real is love. And that is a tough one today to hear. It is the only thing that there is. John Lennon wrote about it. Yeah. It is love. It is compassion. It is joy. That is what we're made of. That's what the world is made of. Anything other than that is an illusion that builds itself. But when you pop it like that balloon, there was nothing in it to begin with. So that's where the soup I think the records refer to it as, it just gets fed this unloving stuff, energy-wise, and then it rots. It will rot. And all we have to do is actually like take an arrow like Cupid and shoot love right into it, and it will pop. And look what love does to unloving actions.
And I think in the book also you talk about how when you do something from a place of non-love, that's also where fear comes from.
Yes. Well, yes, and fear is like a sort of like a, maybe we can call it a dimension of ego conscious. So there's this collective ego conscious that has has I've been shown a band around the planet, like a gray pulsing band, very thin though. And this is an interesting image, and that it's collecting from unloving thoughts, as I just said. And so as that band stays relevant, thinks itself as an essence it's relevant, has sort of like a fake intelligence to it in some way. But then, like, imagine the planet, and every time there is it could be one person doing a major act of love, it's like it shoots up and it punches a hole.
Wow.
The light punches a hole right through that collective ego conscious. So more loving acts, more even thoughts, because we know how powerful thoughts are.
Yeah.
Bruce Lipton's work, the biology of belief. So if we can even think, some people are saying today, well, how can I help? What can I do? Even if you just sit, you don't have to go into deep meditation, but if you have kind thoughts, it doesn't have to be about the people that are doing bad things, but if you have kind thoughts about humanity, about nature, about Gaia, about each other, the more we do that, that's emanating. That's the power of the heart too, and it will literally diffuse. The soup will rot and die, so to speak.
So Mary, if someone is interested in learning more about the Akashic records, they should pick up the book. But then, what else should they do? How do they connect with this?
So what I would do, it's what I did. I mean, I think I'm a living example of like going into something, not knowing what it was, finding out about it, and going, whoa. And every day I go, whoa. So what was it? You do as much research as possible, meaning just like go online and or go into bookstores and see what's out there. My book is an example of the what happens when we live our lives, remembering why we're here by visiting our Akashic records and working through all our human stuff. Because that's what I did in the book. There were things in there that were very personal. And I was like, do I bring this out? And I've had people come to me and say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you wrote about that because I'm dealing with it. So I realized that I'm a living, breathing example of what happens when you visit that aspect of yourself. So read books, look online, and what I want to do is listen to themselves, feel what it feels like when you're reading about the records. If you're feeling like, wow, I know this, there's something about it, and you can't stop thinking about it, then just start researching where to study. There are places, and studying it is not studying about the records. The work in my getting those accreditations was really my spending months and months opening my own records to heal my own wounds and to process blockages, perceived blockages that I had. Because there is a new message that the records are talking about. I've been shown the new earth too, and it's magnificent. And one new message is that our traumas, we all have experienced various forms of trauma. I don't know anyone who hasn't. And it could be from a past life, or it could be when we were younger. So our traumas, our perceptions of the trauma, that's not to invalidate, and the records say this, that there may have been pain, discomfort, but those traumas have a role. Once we separate the energy of the trauma event itself, like just pull, and we do this in the records, working in the records, when we separate the energy of the trauma from the trauma itself, the event, then it becomes this useful asset, and it feeds right into, it has a role. We don't want to get rid of it. It's part of who we are. But it feeds into the chosen role that we have and that we're living out on the planet. So that's brand new. That's a brand new concept.
That's amazing, Mary. I feel like we could talk about this for hours. We end each of these shows with very quick rapid fire. We try to do it in like 15 seconds. We call them 3 big little questions. Are you ready?
Yep.
Just a way for us to get to know people better. How do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
I Love Lucy.
Perfect. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, Queen. We are the
You're the champions. Perfect. And what is your? I know you are familiar with New Jersey. What is one of your favorite spots in New Jersey?
Well, actually, can I name one that's not there anymore?
Sure, of course.
Okay, it was Palisades Amusement Park when I
Oh,
was little.
yeah. Perfect. Mary Madeiras, The Akashic Way, living through the lens of the Akashic Records. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been fascinating,
Thank you.
and it's really an incredible book and an incredible way to think about life and connect. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Thank
Of
you.
course, thank you, thank you. That'll do it for today's Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmitz. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Stories Show. I will see you next time.